This is the Flathead Valley Sports Haven, a new segment where I highlight current and former Flathead Valley area players, coaches, and sports figures celebrating the best athletics our valley has to offer. The Flathead Valley Sports Haven is powered by Logan Health, and today's guest is Joni Petro. Joni is a coach and leader in girls lacrosse here in the Flathead Valley. She joins me to talk about growing the game from the ground up, developing young athletes, and building opportunities for girls in a rapidly expanding sport. From youth programs to high school competition, this episode dives into what it takes to create something that lasts. So Joni, first and foremost, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's go ahead and why don't we get a little background about you. Tell me about who you are, where you came from, what brought you to the Valley.
Sure. Well, my name is Joni Petro, and I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. My family and I moved to the Valley actually 10 years ago this month. I've lived on the East Coast, West Coast before we settled here in Kalispell, and have really enjoyed the opportunity to plug into the community and help bring girls lacrosse to the Flathead Valley.
Now, you are a key figure in the growth of girls lacrosse here in the Valley. Program director and coach, like you said, you play a central role in developing athletes, organizing teams, and expanding opportunities for youth and high school players. Let's just start off with what got you into lacrosse in the first place.
Sure. I remember when I was in 8th grade, I was looking to do an additional sport besides just track, and started with fast pitch softball because that was the other option that there was at my school. So I continued to do that my freshman year of high school, and I played third base, and I looked over to the side, and there was a field of girls running around playing a sport that looked extremely fast, very fun. I had grown up playing soccer my entire life, and it mimicked that in a lot of ways and definitely piqued my interest. I had some friends of mine that were playing, and they quickly convinced me that I should play with them as well. And one of my friends taught me how to throw and catch a little bit, just kind of getting familiar with my first stick prior to tryouts starting and the season beginning. And then the rest of it just made sense for me from there. It's a sport that's transition like soccer, and you play offense and defense just like basketball. And it was an instant hit, and I never looked back.
Yeah, take me through, how would you describe the sport of lacrosse for someone who's, one, never heard of it, never seen it? It's kind of a combo of multiple different sports, basketball, soccer, hockey, all kind of put together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then to make things even more confusing, it's entirely different than boys lacrosse. So boys wear helmets, full set of pads, just like hockey would. Girls lacrosse, we wear a mouth guard and goggles, and that's essentially it. There's more lines on the field that determine safety. So the game, it's a lot like chess in terms of kind of baiting your defenders and being super strategic about how you move offensively to create good scoring opportunities. You sub on the fly like you do in hockey. It's 7v7 on the offensive and defensive end of the field. So strategies are very similar. You can actually learn a lot from watching basketball in particular in terms of setting offensive motions and just developing lacrosse IQ. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
So why the difference for boys and girls? Why the difference for men and women when it's the same sport? What is the reasoning for that?
That's a good question. I don't think they were ever the same, if that makes sense. So way back when, it was traditionally a game used instead of war to settle disputes. And it used to be only men were allowed to play the game because they were, disputes over territories, et cetera. And it was even played to the death. When women were introduced to the game was much more in like the early 1900s. Scotland, I think, is where the first team, and then over in Baltimore, Maryland. And it's always been different. And when you start to look at the game and the rules of women's lacrosse, it's all safety oriented. You might say, oh, that rule doesn't make sense. But if you look at it through the eyes of we're keeping this player safe because they're not in pads or, helmets, et cetera, that often explains it.
Gotcha.
But the field lines are different. The size, the boys play with less players on the field than the girls do. Women's field is bigger.
So it really has nothing to do with gender. It's more so just a completely different game in its own right then.
Yes. And to be honest, I was a 4-sport athlete all growing up. I don't know of another sport where it's so different. down to the actual rules, the lines. Our sticks are different, other than lacrosse.
So I guess from your experience then, you talked about just the paths, but in terms of rules, what's maybe one thing that maybe the men's side gets right that's maybe a little bit better than on the other side? What's maybe one area that the women's side gets maybe right or better?
Sure. To be honest, I don't know that it's a right and wrong. It's so different. It's like, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla?
Gotcha.
It's like you have to kind of appreciate it for its own sense. I love the women's game because it's so strategic and it's fast. And when something happens on the field right, you can feel it. It's a mixture of this art and precision. I actually just watched a podcast where it was the women's head coach at University of North Carolina, who has an extraordinarily dominant team right now. And they won the national championship last year. And they brought her into this podcast with the director of the orchestra at University of North Carolina. And I think it's like the Charlotte Symphony or whatnot. And they did a really cool segment on how sport and art mimic each other. And I don't think there's a better sport to demonstrate that than girls lacrosse. When something happens on the field, that everybody can look at each other and just say, that was pretty.
Oh, that's cool. So let's go into kind of growing the game, so to speak. You're trying to help build a program, kind of a non-traditional lacrosse region here in Montana. Obviously, football is the big sport. So how'd you get into the coaching? How'd you get into this general manager? Take me through kind of that side of things. And you've been with, Northwest Avalanche and the Sharpshooters for, close to 10 years now?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in Cincinnati, I played, and then went off to college, and the gentleman that I played for, that I was a captain for, offered me an opportunity to come basically do an internship with him and became his assistant coach. So I coached with him for 8 years, and I learned so much from him. I actually brought him out to the Valley 3 years ago, I think, to do a coaches clinic, recruiting, talk, and to work with our youth and our high school girls. He's just an amazing resource, and I owe a lot to him. But he definitely gave me my start in coaching and kind of the love of the game and understanding big picture with working with a team and together. And we won a state championship, several Final Four appearances, second place. And one of the coolest things was being able to see kids move on to the next level at what I refer to as their best fit. Whether combining, it's like the perfect Venn diagram of your academics, the amount of time that you want to dedicate towards that, your lacrosse ability, and finding what feels like home for those girls and seeing them, maybe girls that otherwise would not have been able to go to college financially, that were able to do so because of their hard work and their dedication academically as well as athletically.
So I know here in the Valley, I had Chris Manley, your president, on a couple of weeks ago, and one thing that we really talked about a bunch about was kind of building awareness here in the Valley, because lacrosse is, even to this day, it's a growing sport. I know it's been around for a long time, but what was your maybe initial thoughts when you moved to the Valley in terms of, hey, what do we have here for lacrosse, and how are you guys trying to build that awareness and get more participation, get more numbers and all that?
Yes, for sure. So in just a little bit of context, our seniors now were our oldest group of girls that started the youth program in spring of 2016. So in the last 10 years, we've now backfilled. We used to have a high school team and no youth program, which means some years you have a team, some years you don't. So now that we've been able to backfill that, there's a steady supply. So instead of, you look at, I think one of the things that's most admirable about these older group of girls, they had never seen a lacrosse game before they signed up to play. They had no idea about the rules. They had never seen a drill before, and it's kind of seeing the true trailblazers of that. Now come to kids sport on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and you'll see couple hundred kids that between the ages of first grade to eighth grade and then high school as well. So now you look at those little first graders and they now know what a lacrosse game looks like and they know the names of players that are older than them, that they have this real sweet sisterhood camaraderie of the youngest looking up to the oldest, and the oldest just, it's super sweet.
And then, so I know Dom Alfieri a little bit. I know he's associated with the high school. Obviously, I had Chris Manley on and everything. Talk to me about maybe the nuances of the coaching staff, of how you go about maybe orchestrating just this club in general from that top down, and how has that continued to grow with getting the right coaches in place, the right GMs, and how big has that been?
Sure. No, it's always difficult. I would say that is one of our issues with being in a non-traditional area is, I mean, who are the primary people that step in to fill a role as coach? It's a parent that wants a positive experience for their own kid. And how many parents here have seen a game of lacrosse, let alone played it? There are very strong similarities between soccer and basketball and hockey specifically. And so being willing to put together a training program and resources for coaches to feel equipped to step into that role, and being able to help those kids learn their fundamentals so that they can continue to grow and thrive. My goal has always been for kids here to not feel like they're at any type of hindrance or handicap, that they can go compete wherever they want to, whether it's West Coast, East Coast, and not feel intimidated or daunted by, well, these kids have been playing longer or in these areas, that they have the same set of fundamentals, despite the fact being exposed at such a later age, most likely, or with less resources. And so far, we're seeing that be true. This is something that's specific to girls lacrosse. Our governing body, USA Lacrosse, for the girls side of the organization, hosts a national tournament that's super fun. Every year it's held on the East Coast in conjunction with the NCAA tournament. And regions have teams that they host tryouts for. Actually, the tryouts are tomorrow night for Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. And we put together a team. And we've had, I think, a total of 9 players in the last 3 years that have all qualified for that team to go represent our tri-state area out on the East Coast. And the girls cleaned house last year. I think our collective score was, we outscored opponents 56-11 and won the whole bracket for the first time, which was super fun. So again, just telling these girls, you can do it. I don't care that you came from a non-traditional area. You have every ability to show up and compete.
So what has it taken to run this program and to grow this program? What I mean, obviously you've probably put in, I would imagine, there's 24 hours in a day and you're probably working 30-hour days type of thing.
Sure. No, it's a lot for sure. Just trying to be intentional so everything builds off of the previous year, or when we schedule fall ball, that we put together that in such a way that the kids come a little bit more equipped for the next year. But if we can layer everything in fun, so if we can stay focused on the fact that this is truly a rec league where girls that have never, or boys and girls that have never played before, are coming alongside of kids that maybe they're in 6th grade and they started playing when they were in 1st grade, that there's a place and a track for growth and development for opposite ends of the spectrum. And then the kids that love it are having enough fun that they're intrinsically motivated to want more, and trying to partner up and pair these families and these players with cultures and environments that are positive and happy and the type of kids that we want coming back into the program, if that makes sense. So I see it as a partnership. So we have, at least on the girls' side, several clubs that we'll work with that we know have a positive coaching experience. They're whole person develop-minded, positive, that we want kids learning in that environment and to bring that back to the rest of us.
So, I mean, you have some pretty good firsthand experience in terms of evaluating talent and seeing different styles and everything. Obviously, growing up in Ohio, moving to the West Coast and maybe seeing not quite as popular there, and now here in the Flathead Valley. So what's something that you've really come to admire about athletes in the Valley? What makes athletes here kind of unique in your eye?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say even specifically unique to Kalispell, they have a reputation for being gritty. And I'm not saying dirty. It's super clean. The girls here specifically have a reputation amongst Idaho, Montana, Wyoming as being a favorite team to play because they're good, but they're awesome human beings that will out-hustle, out-work, and just produce a quality game no matter where they go, and will win with a smile, they'll lose with a smile, and it's just a blast to be a part of.
What do you think, maybe because again, you have that outside perspective. I mean, I grew up here. I see maybe things differently in that lens, but I agree with what you're saying. But where do you think that maybe comes from? Do you think it's maybe because Montana isn't in the spotlight as much? People don't know about Montana. It seems like, at least being from here, you've always had to outwork someone if you're from Montana.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, I've had the privilege of getting to know a couple professional athletes that we brought out to do clinics and run camps, and have really started mentorship programs essentially with some of our girls here in the Valley. And one of the reasons that they love their Montana girls is it's for the joy of the game. And I think part of that, it's, you hate to say overexposure, but sometimes when you're on the East Coast and you're in Baltimore, Long Island, et cetera, it feels more of a pressure cooker. And some of that's brought on by kids, a lot of it's brought on by parents. And they continually tell me the amount of pressure that is on a lot of these kids from the East Coast to start producing, and you need to be here by this age.
Hey, they say pressure is a privilege.
Yeah, and it definitely can be, but if you're not mentally equipped to handle it, and it's not, it's because we believe in you versus because you have to, there's a very delicate balance in the mental game that happens there. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of research even showing now that if you look at parents of highly successful athletes or even like D1 athletes, their parents tend to be the most laid back. And that's not for lacrosse, it's across the board for sports. So there's a fine balance of a parent coming alongside of a kid and saying, hey, I believe in you, we're willing to support you and invest in you, but you have to be the one taking the initiative, versus a parent living vicariously through their child and putting the weight of the world on them, and publicly displaying that for the good or the bad.
Parents take note.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it on the sidelines and you can see the pressure on the kids' shoulders. And I would say here for the Northwest Sharpshooters and the Avalanche, I think our parents have done a really good job of letting their kids enjoy it for where it is and where they're at, and trying to be a positive influence.
How about just the lifestyle out here in the Flathead Valley? I mean, it's an outdoor lifestyle. You got Big Mountain. Right? Yes, it's still Big Mountain to me. You got Flathead Lake, Whitefish Lake. How much does that outdoor lifestyle maybe play a positive impact into not just lacrosse players, but athletes in general out here?
Sure. We all need a break, right? You know, and a lot of these kids, especially by the time they get to college and they're playing a college sport, they have to rediscover what their decompression is going to be or what their off time is going to be. What do they do that refuels them that's not lacrosse? And the same is true across the board for any type of committed athlete. You have to have your outlet. And I think having access to go for a trail run, to go skiing, to be on the boat is so refreshing and brings a well-balanced athlete. Unfortunately, I think it lies also in the eyes of the beholder, where you'll have a college coach that will greatly appreciate that, or even a high school coach that says that's wonderful. We want well-rounded athletes, but few of them are willing to give the space to allow kids to explore that. So, you know, like my daughter's coach that she's going to play for in Vermont, she does a fantastic job with saying, hey, we realize like we recruit kids that do like to ski and they do like to mountain bike. And instead of saying you can't do these things for the next 4 to 5 years, they're allowed to do that. Some programs they're not, and that's okay. That coach is allowed to, the kids know that when they decide to go play there. So you see both sides. I think as a high school coach working with kids that are a multi-sport athlete, you have to be willing to respect that too, and not just say you're fine with it. You have to honestly be willing to say, yes, I'm okay with, I realize that lacrosse is off season right now. So yes, you should be playing your fall sport, but then having that reciprocated that when it is a spring sport, that a fall sport allows the spring sport to be the priority in that time and to be willing to communicate through that. And I think that's been a really good adulting moment for a lot of my athletes, is learning to communicate with me and say, hey, coach, I'd like to do this. Does this work? And then on the flip side, working with their other coaches as well and taking ownership of those decisions, I think has been huge.
You're listening to the Flathead Valley Sports Haven. We'll be back with Joni Petro, girls lacrosse coach, after this.
Is pain or weakness holding you back? When the pain cramps your lifestyle, consider joint replacement. At Logan Health Orthopedics, their total joint program provides proper education, support, and guidance during your journey. Orthopedic nurse navigators walk you through the entire process, from decision to recovery. Their surgeons use the latest technology to get you back to activity quickly with less pain and fewer restrictions. Visit logan.org/ortho to learn more. Get back to what you love with Logan Health Orthopedics.
Back from the break here on the Flathead Valley Sports Haven with Joni Petro, coach of girls lacrosse here in the Valley. Okay, Joni, so you brought up a really good point that I actually want to talk about. The multi-sport facet is something I always like to talk about. I've talked with even people on here from Jackson Strength Academy type of thing, where they have a lot of multi-sport athletes, and just seems like in general, coaches, collegiately, whatever it may be, they want multi-sport athletes. You hear of, obviously in California, New York, you might have to specialize in everything. What's maybe one thing that you see here, kids being multi-sport athletes, how much did that maybe help them for lacrosse or for whatever else it may be?
Sure. I mean, the mental aspect, burnout, just to giving them something to look forward to that's different. My background's exercise science, so even just realizing your muscles need a break from repetitive motion. So, I mean, you think of a pitcher, how many pitchers can you make in a season? The thing I tell my multi-sport athletes is do your in-season sport. Just don't forget about your stick. And so we have an exercise that we call wall ball, and there's a routine. It can be as long or as short as you want, but typically on average it's about 15 to 20 minutes long, and it's just a series of like passing and catching where your wall is your partner, and it's hands down by far the single greatest thing you can do for your game. It's like doing footwork for soccer, or you're dribbling, ball handling for basketball, and if you can do that just a couple times a week for 15 minutes, awesome.
And there's nothing that, how do I want to say this? When you're a multi-sport athlete, if you're a track runner, that's only going to help you for football. If you're playing football, that's only going to help you for basketball. If you're playing basketball, that's going to help you for baseball. No, there's no sport that in a sense competes, because you're going to be training different muscles, from slow twitch fiber muscles to fast twitch fiber muscles. I've always felt like playing multi-sports, it's only going to better you for the sport you want to be good at.
Right. And at some point, it might get to the point, like the thing that I feel like is hard being from Montana in a non-traditional sport area is you have to travel more.
Yeah.
I mean, Jackson Hole is in our league, and that's a 10-hour drive. So then when you're talking about even looking at going into recruiting and you're trying to go, I don't care if you're going West Coast or East Coast, you're looking at automatically a day of travel. So I can't tell you how many times we were on the East Coast and kids are, oh my gosh, I had to travel 2 or 3 hours to get here today. And my girls will look at me like, yeah, this was a red eye and a full day of travel.
I was going to say a trip to Missoula and back is a daily trip.
Yes, it's not, but it's prepared them for kind of the grind that will be coming. And so I think that's a good onboarding step, but the geographical location, it makes it harder to be a multi-sport athlete, though, too, because even, say, soccer, it's a high school sanctioned sport. The school is providing transportation, uniforms. You're not paying. They're providing for food, hotel stays if necessary, where as a non-sanctioned sport, we don't have those luxuries. But even still, you're traveling 5 hours to Bozeman for a league game, so it makes it hard to do two things at once. When I was in high school, I would go to lacrosse practice right after school, and then I'd go to my club soccer practice in the evenings. And that's a lot harder for Montana kids to do. So at some point, I can see choices having to be made because of simply time or finances. But to your point, absolutely. Like, I don't see a detriment to,
just from the athletic side of things.
Fast twitch muscles or fast twitch muscles, hand-eye coordination.
What has been maybe some of the hardest parts you've actually just kind of already touched on developing that game? Obviously, travel's a huge one. I know hockey has a lot of issues with that here in this state because, even you look at the high school, some of their nearest conference games are sometimes 2-3 hours away. So what's been maybe the biggest challenges in terms of growing this program?
Sure. We've been super fortunate. In our valley, we are seeing numbers grow at the youth level and the high school level. And because, like Missoula has teams, Bozeman, Billings, and then you go into northern Idaho, but it's the lack of competition. So instead of saying we have 20 teams to play, we have 8 or 12. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So trying to continue to find variety. And some cities haven't been so fortunate where they've been able to grow their numbers and are seeing numbers slide. So then that means available competition decreases. So then when that happens, you start getting parents and kids that are, we'd like to play a little bit more of a variety. Yes, we all would. But unfortunately, there's just not more. You think of the population of Montana, and all of the state of Montana could fit in one city elsewhere. So I
remember when Montana hit the 1 million threshold.
Right. So that's an issue that we deal with, and so that means we have to travel further. So how do we remove barriers to travel? And then you're potentially taking on liability by offering rides or things like that from a club perspective. And so I think that's where we go back to just trying to grow the community of it, where it's not just fun for the kids, it's fun for the parents. The parents enjoy being with each other. When it does come time where, for example, our varsity girls travel at a different schedule, more weekends than not, than our youth. My youngest is still in the youth program, but we have friends that my youngest feels comfortable going with. Mm-hmm. And so you have that community aspect of making it work. And when kids are having fun and parents are having fun, those sacrifices feel like an investment. The travel time in the car, I wouldn't trade that. The conversations and the fun that happens from that, and just trying to get parents to shift mindset on that a bit to realize that it's an investment. That's well worth it.
Yeah, I love that. I know when I was younger and playing sports, some of my fondest memories are those car rides with my mom, brother, and sister going to someone's game type of thing and making jokes about how like shoes smell or where are we going to eat or that kind of stuff.
Kind of the rituals or the traditions that happen as a result of it. Yes.
And then not just the distance, but how about the battling against other sports? Because obviously in Montana, football is one of the biggest sports just globally, and I'm talking about American football, not soccer, but soccer's right up there too. But then you have wrestling's big in Montana, hockey's becoming big. What about the competition in that sense of like finding the time for these kids to even be able to do lacrosse when, hey, they might be in softball or volleyball or basketball or football?
Right. No, it's a challenge. And, when you're younger, it's easier because the commitment and the ask is less. And at some point when kids get older into high school, like choices have to be made at some point, and especially if kids are thinking that they want to pursue a certain route over a different one. And those are healthy adult choices to be making as well. Same like 2 spring sports at the same time. To be honest, I don't know how you would do it beyond a certain age because everybody would have to travel and opposite weekends. But I think, honestly, it comes down to coaches looking at their athletes as kids and whole being kids that, it's not fair to a team if a kid's never at practice. But if a child is trying to play football and lacrosse, which are 2 different sports, 2 different seasons, why would we not allow that to happen?
I feel like coaches in the Valley are very good about that too.
Yes, and I would say for the most part, yes, I would agree with that. It's gotten more challenging because I do feel like and maybe because again, I have all girls and I coach girls, but them feeling the pressure to please coaches that are saying, well, you really need to be here. If you want to make varsity fall sport, you really should be here now in the spring. And it's like, really, is that accurate? Or is that just something that's being said to kind of force an issue? But if I was looking at the player as a whole athlete and understood the opportunities that this other sport is providing and the relevancy of it back to the other sport, I think there's a lot of communication that could take place there to partner in that a lot more. And then there's always the summer too, right? There's a summer for any of the other sports. And you're also removing the equation, the part of the equation I feel like is probably one of the most important parts, is what is the player willing to commit to on their own? And do they want the ownership of it? Sometimes you have parents that have questions about playing time, and it's always or should always be an athlete-led conversation of what are you looking for? What is your goal? What is the team over me? And what are you willing to put in on your own to contribute? And if you have a kid that's playing a spring sport, trying to prepare for a fall, like I ask my kids to keep their stick in their hand. It takes 15 minutes a couple times a week. And I would assume that a fall sport, be it flag or soccer, would say the same thing. Just put the ball at your feet.
I like that you keep coming back to that, because something that I don't know if you really see it as much in this day and age. Like when I was younger, summer would hit, one day I'd go and shoot hoops. The next day I'd be playing baseball. The next day I'd have a football in my hands. It seems like in this day and age, we don't see kids just dribbling a basketball down the sidewalk as much. We don't see kids kicking a soccer ball down the sidewalk as much. How imperative is it for these kids to just get out and play pickup, to just get out and play with their friends and do that kind of thing? Because I feel like that really helps kind of grow things that way too.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And I think part of it is screens and technology. Kids have gotten used to the easy button of self-entertaining through a screen than the physical activity of being out. I do think it's kind of like breaking the sugar addiction, right? Like if you can make the painful cut and then kids start realizing like, oh, I was outside today and I actually had fun. But kids don't go to each other's houses as much anymore. Mm-hmm. There's not the house that has the hoop that everybody goes and shoots at. And that's actually kind of going back to Chris Manley, our board president, trying to reinvigorate this idea of pickup games in the summer where it's like for the love of the game and it's at the community event that, hey, we're going to be at this park at 6:00 tonight. Grab your stick. It's boys, it's girls. The format of the game allows us to all play together and to continue to build into that community and the fun of it, because it creates more friends for the kids. And we all know that one of the driving motivational factors into kids participating in sport is friends.
And when you think about, like, my mom worked at the high school. In the summers, she'd have summers off. Guess what my brother, sister, and I were not allowed to do? We were not allowed to be home from the hours of 8 to 6. We had to be outside, maybe check in with her every couple hours. But my mom was, get outside. I don't want to see your butt again until it's time for lunch type of thing. And we had to go entertain ourselves. We had a baseball field right next to us. My brother and I could go play baseball. We could play basketball type of thing, get on our bikes, go ride around town, go visit grandma and say hi type of thing. But my mom was literally like, I don't want to see you until it's time to see you.
Yeah, go have fun. Well, and I think that's part of kids being overextended too. If it's constantly from, high demands of this, and this, there is no break. There's not a break for kids to go and be kids and to pick up their lacrosse stick because it's fun and they just want to do that. And so kind of having some of that margin built in a little bit, which again, for a multi-sport athlete, that can be hard because you're going from one season immediately into the like, I know that grind. I did it my entire childhood into college. But I also remember loving it enough that I would go shoot hoops. I would go do soccer footwork, my wall ball routine for lacrosse. But the importance of having kids love it and giving them some amount of flexibility in their schedule, some margin to help fight burnout, support their mental health. And if they want to learn to watercolor and play the guitar to kind of be their release, good for them.
How about, I want to kind of talk about like your schedule and everything. You talk about going kind of Bozeman as a conference game and everything. What's maybe something that's fun though about what's the positive sides of traveling to a Bozeman, to a Cody, Wyoming, to a Jackson Hole, and playing all these different teams? I got to imagine, the cons is you're traveling maybe 8, 9, 10 hours, but I feel like still the positives got to outweigh the negatives, right?
1,000%. If you came, so quick plug, Friday, May 1st is our girls' senior night. And if you were to ask any of those girls what their favorite memories are of the, last few years, specifically in high school, I would almost bet you $100 it'll come up that it's Jackson Hole team weekend, because we've surprised the kids with, they ride down with their parents, but then between waking hours and to bed, you're with the team. So we play our games, and then usually there's a chunk of time where it's free, whether it's in the afternoon or after the last game going into dinner. And we've done photo scavenger hunts in town where the team's broken into smaller teams and they're working with strangers to take group photos or to video themselves doing the Macarena with tourists under the antler arch or whatever it is. Team like birthday dinners that have happened over weekends like this. 2 years ago, we hired a line dancing instructor to give us a private line dancing lesson. We did rent a Sprinter van one time and it had probably 3/4 of the team in it and ended up with a flat tire where the girls ended up timing. It was my husband that was changing the tire and we're timing him as
NASCAR
he was like,
pit stop.
it was exactly, tire irons were flying. It was the whole, his knees came up skinned from it. It was hysterical.
Oh, that's
so
fantastic.
You're right. The memories of that, getting to go visit different restaurants, favorite places, it does build a lot of memories. And I think it's the community part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to shift it from a negative into something that's a positive?
And then, so let's go into Northwest Avalanche Lacrosse, Northwest Shooters and everything. Take me through, when is your season? When is the primary in-season? What is the off-season?
Sure. So I'll start with the high school girls program. Our first day of practice is February 1st. According to like league rules on how soon you can begin your practices. And we start inside because it's cold and icy and
it's minus 20 in Montana in February.
So as soon as we get permission from the city that we're allowed to be on the grass, we'll transition outside. So this year it was the end of March, where typically it's not until like last week, first full week of April. And then for the high school, it's a fast and furious. We play games every weekend for 6 weeks and culminating with the state tournament. For the youth, for the sharpshooters program, we do kind of optional indoor practices to make it an easy, low barrier to entry where kids can come and try to play the sport for the first time, suit up, gear up, get equipment on the boys, lend out gear, and we'll use the fairgrounds for that. And we usually run those starting in March, probably early March, running through spring break. And then again, as soon as we get permission for the youth to be on the field, then they're outside. So they've been outside now for the last week and a half, almost the end of 2 weeks. And depending on the age, you practice from 2 to 3 times a week. And there's 5 tournaments that the youth are scheduled for. And it's not too bad in terms of traveling. Like this weekend will be an inter-squad scrimmage that happens at Kids Sport. We'll go to Helena, Bozeman, Missoula. Actually, Missoula's not happening this year. It's kind of, it just depends on the season. Coeur d'Alene, Sandpoint, and then the last big tournament is Lax Fest in Spokane. So we try to go east a little bit, stay in Montana. We try to go west a little bit. For example, when we go to Spokane, we get to see teams we wouldn't ever see anywhere else because Spokane's the meeting point. So we try to get some variety that way too.
How easy is it for someone to get their kids signed up? What if they just want to do it as an open gym thing and don't want to do like a team? Or are there abilities to be able to do that?
Yes. So we actually have done Learn to Plays where we partner with PE programs and teachers in pretty much any elementary, middle schools in the entire valley. And we'll expose kids that way. And then starting in if the weather's nice, so September, October, we can even, sometimes schools have brought us in during lunch hours or like free periods to be outside, and we'll do pickup style lacrosse there, go into the PE classes, and then once it gets cold, we'll do Learn to Plays outside of school, maybe for an hour, 5 to 6. We have a couple different indoor facilities that we'll use for something like that. And then, so kids, they don't have to be a registered player to do that. It's simply meant, come try it. We think you'll like it. You'll have fun. And then when the season gets started, there's an opportunity. Right now this season, we had several kids reach out that said, hey, my child expressed interest. Can they try it for a practice? Yes, you absolutely can. And I think they always come back. We've got a couple kids that are playing hockey, and so they can't, the tournament schedule conflicts. So they've opted to say, hey, can we practice and not. Yes, absolutely.
Where does someone go to sign up? Do they call a number? Is there a website link?
Yes, just Google, you say Northwest Sharpshooters for the youth program, which is 1st grade through 8th grade, and then Northwest Avalanche, which is high school boys and girls, and all the registration info's up there. High school, because we're already on our way, the season's closed because of when we have to submit our rosters to be eligible for state. And then at the youth level, sometimes we'll get to a point where, if we can break this number, then we can have 2 teams. And so we could try to consider that and make sure that teams aren't too big, that are not too small, and it's going to be the right mix to give kids a happy experience.
And something that you touched on before we even came on the air here is Northwest, it's Avalanche Lacrosse has their first, what did you say, All-American player. Take me through that.
Yes. So super exciting news. In the Valley, we have our very first All-American award. So USA Lacrosse is our governing body, and they operate just in the same way that, basketball, soccer, et cetera, would give these awards out. So we have our very first All-American that was awarded to a high school player actually 2 years ago, and after the conclusion of the 24 season, and that was Hannah Gray Petro representing the girls side of the program. And then on the girls side, we have currently 1 player in college, and we have 4 college commits, and then a handful more that are looking to play club locally at MSU or U of M, which is super exciting. So we've got,
And all these girls are Flathead Valley born and raised, right?
Yep.
Or maybe not necessarily born, but they're Flathead Valley
Absolutely,
players.
which is phenomenal. So, you look at these kids that, sorry.
You're good.
You look at these kids that had never seen a game and trailblazed, fought their way through it, and then are committed and all are getting the ability to go get financial resources to go play at the next level. They're meeting their goals, whether it's the play at the highest level I can, or whether it's to get scholarship money to be less of a financial burden. We talked about it, I think, off air. What is your best fit? Mm-hmm. And these kids have found their best fit from a valley in Montana where people didn't even know there was lacrosse. That's huge.
How long do you think it is before we see, we see in some AA schools, Missoula, Hellgate, before we see maybe lacrosse becoming a high school sanctioned sport?
That's a good question. There's a lot to work through with the numbers. So when I was in Cincinnati and I was playing, we were not a high school sanctioned sport. My school sponsored us as like a club. And
kind of how Whitefish High School, a lot of these baseball teams are right now.
Yes, exactly. And it took about 20 years.
Wow.
But you go to Cincinnati now, and every high school has a team. For us, if we were to become a high school sanctioned team right now, where let's just say Flathead and Glacier and Whitefish each had their own, we don't have enough to support those numbers quite yet. So if it happened too soon, it could be super detrimental.
Gotcha.
Because all of a sudden, then my kids that go to Big Fork or are homeschooled, they'd have to get special permission to play on another team. So I think we'll have to see a greater base. Like, we're seeing good growth here, but I think we'd have to see greater growth in surrounding areas that are, quote unquote, more traditional sports schools, where our school could say it's worth the dollars to make that happen.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
you could almost start it as a co-op in a sense too sometimes, because I know like when I'll just use Class C basketball as an example because that's where you see it more. So you see multiple schools like Denton, Geyser, Stanford combine and make one team type of thing. So it'd be like a Kalispell, Glacier, Whitefish, Columbia Falls would be like one team type of thing.
Exactly. And USA Lacrosse allows a lot of freedom locally to make decisions that make the most sense for us. So when you live on Long Island, which is super tiny geographically, but it's the absolute hotbed for lacrosse players. Like, the number of lacrosse players coming out of that small area is astounding. So to say put some restrictions and parameters in that area don't make sense to apply to us.
Yep.
So for the girls, for example, we're doing something new this year that I'm really excited about, and the sharpshooter program actually demoed this for the high school to see if this was going to work, is we play a smaller sided game. So when the Olympics come, Olympic Sixes is a formatted game where the rules are essentially the same for men's and women's, even though they're two different sports. They've unified it in a lot of ways for viewership, so it starts to make more sense, and you can turn on the TV and start to kind of more quickly understand what's going on, and it just fits a lot of the Olympic sport parameters a bit better. It's an elevated way of play that's not conducive to teaching kids to play that have never seen the game before. So if we can step it back and do smaller sided games where kids are playing, it's more touches, it's playing all over the field. And now we're modeling that for the JV girls side of things in the state. So to your point, it's becoming a little bit like a co-op where I might have kids that would benefit greatly from a JV team, but I don't quite have enough to field my own team. But I can pair with Helena and I can pair with Missoula to give these playing opportunities to kids. And so it's very athlete-centric. What can we do that's best for these kids to promote a healthy, positive playing experience so that they come back?
That's absolutely phenomenal. Again, Joni Petro of the Northwest Avalanche Lacrosse, Northwest Sharpshooters. There's a lot of great coaches here. Dom Alfieri, David Rizzolo, who I actually know, he's one of my brother's best friends, coaches out there. Obviously had Chris Manley on. It just sounds like you guys got such a good program going, and it just seems like it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as the years go on.
Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, the success of the high school is dependent upon the youth and the partnership there for sure. And so with having Chris Manley come on board, because they moved to the Valley in the last year, and he also came from an area that you think of New York, and it's a lacrosse hotbed, but his town was very similar to ours. So understanding our backgrounds are very similar in terms of like seeing the game grow and seeing what it does for communities and families and kids. So how do we take that and make those opportunities available for the youth? And it's been really fun to see. The sharpshooters it's fantastic. You know, like I said, this is my 10th year going into it, and it's been a lot of fun, and seeing the kids grow has been a blast.
Well, I think that's all I have for you today. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure that got out there? Or did we kind of cover everything?
I think we covered everything. If you're interested in seeing lacrosse for the first time, we have one giant home weekend that's for youth and high school. Like I mentioned, the girls have senior night, and we actually do it as like a whole youth girls night where they're involved in all the celebrations. It's super fun. So we'll start off with high school games on Friday night, and then a giant tournament, which brings roughly 60 teams to the Valley, will take place at Kidsport all weekend long. And then high school girls and boys games are kind of sprinkled along the way. So if you're interested in checking out the schedule, the high school schedules are posted on the Avalanche website. And then the weekend is marked off on the Sharpshooter website, but individual game times, because there's so many, it's an app on the phone. But
and I'll make sure to put links to Northwest Avalanche and to
that'd be
Northwest
great.
Sharpshooters.
Come check it out. It's a blast.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining me here today. It was a lot of fun. I feel like I learned quite a bit. So hopefully the listeners, by the time this gets published, hopefully it's very informative.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.